Hi, I am Yücel Özel. I work as a cinematographer, and in my spare time I create content about the art and craft of filmmaking. Welcome to a new episode of SORDUM, a series where we sit down with creative filmmakers from around the world to explore their journeys, creative processes and sources of inspiration. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more in-depth filmmaking interviews in English. Today's guest is someone with a powerful visual language and a clear passion for storytelling, Gary Scaife. He is the founder and director of Oliver Bryan Productions, and over the years, he has built a body of work that spans short films, branded content, and professional productions, all with a distinct cinematic style. Let's dive into Gary's journey into filmmaking. Could you share the story of how you embarked on your journey into filmmaking? What inspired you to pursue this path, and what were some of your initial projects?
So my journey into filmmaking, like a lot of other people I meet, was actually an accident. I know there's a lot of cases of people also who dream of being filmmakers and content creators from a very young age, but to be totally honest, I simply was not one of those. The youngest job I remember wanting to be, maybe when I was like early teenage years, was a DJ. This led me into music production, which I kind of started picking up and doing by myself, and later moved on into college to study music. So while I was studying music and doing music production in my own free time, I was working and getting to meet local artists and producing those music tracks. The next problem we had is we had produced this music that was not so great, but to us at the time, it meant the world. But we needed a music video. We had totally zero budget, and it was like the really early days of YouTube. So the way I looked at it was, just like everything else up to this point in life, I will just do it myself. So I went out there and I think I sourced a Canon 550D. In other parts of the world, I think it's a Rebel T2i, T3i, something like that. You'll know which one I mean, those early like entry-level Canon DSLRs. I'm sure you can put the rest together by yourself here. My first ever video I ever created was a music video for a track I'd also musically produced for a local artist here in the UK. I don't remember much about it. I don't think I knew what camera settings was. I was probably just in the kind of automatic setting of the Canon. I've watched it back recently and it is awful. But in a poetic way, it may be the most important video I ever created, because after that, I could not stop. I was simply hooked.
How has your approach to filmmaking evolved over time? In what ways have technological advancements and personal experiences influenced your methods?
Honestly, I have lost count the amount of times that my workflow and process has changed. As I mentioned, starting out, I didn't even know what camera specs was. I didn't come into this with kind of like any knowledge being taught by anyone. I was just by myself. It was really early days of YouTube. It was like 2 decades ago. So it wasn't that much content online. But as it started to come online, I consumed it all and I just really started learning. And I know you hear a lot and it's really cliche, but it really was all about just getting out there and shooting and kind of making the worst videos I would ever make to make the mistakes and improve. And a couple of years into my journey, I moved from Canon entry-level DSLR to the Blackmagic. It was the first ever Blackmagic. And looking back now, that may have been one of the worst mistakes I've ever made in terms of my filmmaking career. Nothing against Blackmagic. It was more something I have to take responsibility for and my technical knowledge. I'm not saying the Blackmagic's first ever camera was great by any means, but I know that the problem with my relationship with that camera at the time was totally down to me. I was fully hooked on the Blackmagic forum. The thing was popping. I didn't really post ever, but I used to read and consume, and then that convinced me into buying Blackmagic's first ever camera. And although I was upgrading from an entry-level DSLR, what only shot compressed 8-bit, really bad 1080p, to this kind of raw cinema DNG cinema camera, what had way better, like higher ceiling, I would say that my videos got worse, simply down to my technical ability. I was just not ready. I had no idea what a log profile was, no idea how to process and get the best out of this camera. At the time, I needed something to kind of babysit and help me guide to get the best possible video, like better battery life and using all the features that come inside that DSLR. Where with the Blackmagic, it was kind of like put your big boy pants on and do everything yourself. You really need to understand how to control, light and manage these images. Luckily for me though, timing is everything, because Sony decided to release a camera called the A7S, now synonymous on the A7S Mark III, and though that line of cameras will go down in history. But at the time, I don't know if anyone watching this will remember, but it was like the first ever A7S release was almost kind of looked at a bit like a scientific camera. Maybe that's a bit too far, but it was almost like its only thing it will be good at is sensitivity, as the S stood for that. And it was like, this camera, you'll be able to wind up the ISO and it stays clean forever. We've not seen this. I know now it's pretty common, but at that time, it was unheard of. And for some reason, just because I was struggling to deal with noise and stuff in the Blackmagic images, because of me, not the camera, that camera really spoke to me. So I ended up jumping in, moving from Blackmagic to Sony. And I guess I got a little bit lucky because I did not necessarily buy it for this reason, but that ended up being one of the easiest cameras to get a cinematic image out of. And you really did not need much skill. I picked up momentum from there, and I believe my skills started to follow right behind. As the budgets come in, the pressure come with it, I really started to nail down. Things really started to click, and I really started to understand, wait, it's not about the camera, it's about what's in front of the camera. It's about how I light this, it's about how I lens and frame this up. You know, it's about what I'm getting my subjects to do, where they're facing, where they're sitting. All the stuff I now know is really important, really started to click. I don't know, timing was everything. The A7S, my knowledge, I'd been in the game for maybe like 5 or 6 years, and stuff starts to go really well. From there, I moved into the FS5, went into multicam setups as my shoots were demanding it. Run, I think, A6-300 as a B cam. Picked up like the A7 III. Many other cameras, we don't need to go through them all. We'll be here a long time. Like many of us, I've got a problem with buying cameras and then switching systems. But now I totally look at cameras totally different. Here, a couple of decades in, and I just don't even care. I don't care about brands. I don't care about loyalty. I just see them as tools. For me, I'm just a builder on a construction site. I need a hammer. I need a screwdriver. I need a drill. Whatever it is for the shoot, I kind of pride myself on the ability to kind of understand and know what tool is right for the job. Because as a DP, when people hire me, one of the main things that they're going to pay for is the fact that when they give me budget, idea, concept, they trust me to say, this camera, this lens, this package, this is how we should do it within the constraints of our money, idea and time. Because getting that right is so important to the final result. You know, the amount of times I've seen someone choose like an Arri Alexa just because the budget allows it, the projects end up coming out crap, and then they'll start blaming other things, when really it was just a wrong tool for that job. You know, the best image quality in the world probably comes from those big Arri Alexas and Sony Venices and on. But that don't mean they're the right tool for jobs with massive amounts of money. Because you should really be trying to place yourself in the shoes of the editor and the client and the producer and the agency. Think about what's going to kind of give the best result. The best example I can give for what I'm trying to get across here is, if you're working, say, in a documentary or a commercial, corporate job, and you're trying to tell a big story, you might have the money for an Arri Alexa, and that may get you the best image quality, but maybe that mirrorless camera or smaller cinema camera gets you 3 times as much footage. Maybe that means you tell a better story, you sell more products, you end up with a happier client and agency, and that in the long run is going to give you a much better career.
When starting a new project, where do you draw your inspiration from? What elements in storytelling captivate you the most?
I'm sure this is different on a person-to-person, individual scale, but when I start a new project, I don't always find inspiration is there to begin with. It kind of ramps up, like all the projects I've ever become obsessed with, it's like ramped up the more the project has gone on, which is a good thing. I do like it to prefer that way. You know, sometimes I think you can kind of burn out the other way. But whether it's a personal project, I shoot a lot of documentary content. So whether it's kind of a story I've found and I'm working on a personal project, or it's in a commercial or corporate setting, it's just like the more I dive in, I'll be doing the interviews, hearing the stories of the people. That's when I start having ideas, start putting stuff together. And really that's where I draw my inspiration from. I also draw it from like gear and equipment, and that's kind of frowned upon. I like to challenge myself and solve problems. One of the worst things I've ever found, and we're all going to go through ups and downs in this career, but I find myself the most unhappy, when I'm not facing problems. That might sound a little strange on the surface, but so someone approaches you with kind of a new idea, or you're on set and you're faced with a new project, you're under pressure, that's where the cogs in my brain start turning. That's almost like my flow state. I kind of just block everything out and I'll be focused really on what's the best way to get the best result to solve this problem right here. Like, if I'm really comfortable just shooting the same thing over and over again with no problems, I've really nailed it and smoothed it out, that's where I find myself feeling like the least inspired. At the end of the day, a viewer really does not care how many problems, how much budget, how much you run over time and had to capture one thing. They don't care, no one cares. They only care about the end result, the viewing experience. So try and always keep that in mind, and hopefully that kind of pushes you on to do the best you can in that situation, and you keep things really positive.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced when working with limited budgets? How do you find creative solutions in such situations?
I absolutely love this question because I believe there are so many people out there who don't truly know how to work with and handle a tight, limited budget. Everyone seems to focus on what you can do with it, but I like to flip that and really focus on what you can't do. A message I'm always trying to get across to directors, producers, agencies is simply when they come with an idea and a location, I want them to ask themselves, like, have you seen this done many times before and it looks great? If you're bringing me an idea of this location that you can't really recall a great reference in your mind, there's probably a reason for that. We've been making films for a very long time. Everything has already been done. Now, I'm not saying that you can't make any location look great and tell a great story. You definitely can. But it's that what costs loads of money. When you go into a location with a really strong, kind of hard to achieve idea, that's when you need time, money, you need setup days, you need rehearsal days, you need everything to make that really work. Where if you reverse that and you start thinking about, oh, I've seen this scene in so many movies before, that's simply because it is really easy to make it look cinematic. Because I'm sure many filmmakers know this already, or you are about to find out, but if you enter a location that you've seen look great many times before, it's just easy to make it look great once again. If it's one of those scenes that we've seen in movies over and over again, as soon as you put the camera up, lighting just works really easily, and that is what's going to save you time and money. And that is the biggest tip I can give to really making low-budget filmmaking work. I guess anytime I've actually experienced a tight, low-budget project go really wrong, it is the mistakes was made in pre-production. If you're not given enough time, money, and crew, and you're faced with a hard-to-light location, it's hard to block out where the actor's going to be stood, where they're coming from, where they're going to finish. Or it's a nightmare, like you're running out of time, you've not got enough lights to cover the spaces too big, etc. One problem just rolls on to the next. So yeah, to really save and make low-budget projects look really expensive and amazing, it's all done in pre-production.
During post-production, what aspects do you prioritize? Could you discuss your focus areas in editing, color grading, or sound design?
During post-production, in recent years, I've changed a very lot. I am a big believer in teamwork when it comes to post-production. I think it is kind of impossible, with maybe the exception to ridiculously rare cases, but I think it's kind of impossible to get the absolute best results out of editing and post-production if you are doing everything yourself. If you are the color grader, you're chopping up the clips and you're building the story, you're doing the audio mixing, you're doing your own feedback. Like, if you're doing all that yourself, then you're guaranteed you are not getting the most out of that footage. There's a famous saying that I use all the time, which is losing sight of the forest by focusing on the leaves. I always use this to try and get across to people that this is what happens in post-production. For someone who's kind of so involved in the pre-production and shooting process, you are just so consumed by it, you are never really going to be able to get the bigger picture, kind of place the story together in a way that's the best for the footage and what it needs. It's about really understanding how this will enhance the result and then saving a bit of budget to make that work, because we just kind of spend all the budget and we'll be like, oh, I can save money because I'll do the editing, and you're actually harming the project. It might be better having one less crew member on set, a little less lighting, a slightly worse camera package, and then an editor puts it together better, means your video and final result will be better.
What techniques do you use to create atmosphere in your films? How do lighting, music selection, and location choices contribute to this?
I could spend all day here talking about lighting and lenses, so I will try to condense it and just kind of make this as impactful as I possibly can. First up, I think 70 to 75% of bad framing is the wrong lens. And then there's another 5, 10, maybe 15% of that can also be where the camera's positioned or the tripod is. So basically just change lenses often and move your camera often, because all this kind of panning and tilting and slight tweaks can often be saved by just moving the camera, changing the lens or something like that. And this is also why I absolutely love zoom lenses. My lighting style and go-to kind of techniques is a combination of shadow towards camera and then like natural lighting or lighting for the space itself. I'm obsessed with the Greg Frasers and Roger Deakins of the world, how they have so much lighting available to them and time available, but yet they still light naturally and kind of shape the image exactly how the location would be. And I think in low budget filmmaking, we can really learn from those guys. If you enter a location, say it's got a window, then light from the direction of the window. Don't try and battle it, you know, fill from the other side, but your key light wants to be motivated the way the room looks like it should be lit. Even put your light outside the window, that looks amazing most of the time. Place your subject relevant to be lit by the window or maybe in the background if there's another window. You know, if you're backlighting and there's practicals, there's tube lights on the roof or lamps, then, you know, push from that direction, the backlights, match the colour temperature of those practicals. Just make it feel really like there is no lighting happening and the scene is lit exactly how it should be. Some more of my go-to tips will be eye lights. Will stop any scene feeling underexposed. So if you want to light a nighttime scene that feels really moody, just make sure there's a reflection in an eyeball and the viewer will never really think it is underexposed. Rembrandt triangle, this is where you get a triangle of light under the shadow side of someone's face. That is a really great middle ground if you're, say, filming like a corporate or commercial job, to have some shape and some shadow and some dimensions to your image, but you don't want to push it too far, make it too moody. Aim for that Rembrandt triangle and the client will normally be happy. As I said, I could be here all day, but they're just a few of the many I use and I've learned over the years. Hopefully some of those will be useful.
How important is teamwork in your projects? How do you manage communication and task distribution among your crew?
If you want the fastest and easiest way to make your videos better, above any new expensive camera or lens, above any new gimbal or anything like that, even above getting more budget from your projects and clients, it is simply teamwork. I think this is one of the most overlooked things in filmmaking in general, but especially in the younger up-and-coming people. In this world of Instagram, they're all just trying to do it themselves. They're kind of solo, kind of small camera people, and that's great. It's how we all started. But I know one thing for certain, and that is simply without the friends I've made, the team I've built around me, I would not be where I am in my career today. We're all going to have ups and downs. You know, we're going to have months where we feel like we're not achieving enough and we've failed. We're going to have months where we feel amazing. But you need support to lean on. You also need to be there for them to lean on you. You're all going to aid each other. You're all going to work together, pick each other up, you know, pat each other on the back. It is absolutely a must to achieve. The way I like to try and get this across to people is by simply thinking of the best video you can. The best video you've ever watched, the best video you've recently watched, whatever it is. Just think right now, place that video inside your mind. And then ask yourself one question. Was that done by someone by themselves? I can guarantee you the answer is no. It was done by a team. It was done by multiple people. So if you one day ever want to achieve 50% of that video, you will also need a team. The team is not going to be provided to you on a plate like, here's a team. You know, you're going to have to build a rapport with people. You're going to have to meet people. It won't be your friends that you met from school normally. You'll have to reach and meet new people who've grown up somewhere else, but they're interested in the same thing. Luckily enough, we've got Instagram. Super easy. DM someone, shoot with them for free, pressure off, just get to know each other. And you never know, they might actually become one of your closest friends.
What are your overall thoughts on Panasonic Lumix cameras? Specifically, how has the Lumix S1R Mark II model impacts your professional projects, considering features like 8K video recording, internal 5.8K ProRes RAW, and advanced autofocus?
As I mentioned before, I'm someone who moves around an awful lot in terms of brands I've used over the last couple of decades. Well, the newest of all them brands is Lumix. I got my first Lumix around 2 or 3 years ago, and now I have a bunch of them. I actually have the 2 latest cameras from Lumix, which is the S1R2 and the S1 II. These things are really pushing the limits of what mirrorless cameras can do in the world of video. They've actually got me thinking about what the future is and how I'm going to own and operate cameras, as they're getting way more capable, way faster than I thought things would. They've got internal RAW and ProRes options, false color, 32-bit flow audio. The list of really high-end professional video features just goes on. These things are smaller and cheaper and are outperforming in terms of features some of the really big, expensive cinema cameras. I speak from right now being in the middle of a current project for a brand here in the UK. It's a multiple day shoot, and I'm telling like a mini documentary. I'm telling a story for the brand. So it's multiple interviews, probably going to do like 20 interviews and loads of B-roll of all the participants. Normally, I would shoot this on a cinema camera, and while I am doing some of the interviews with some of the multicams, there is cinema cameras there. I've chosen for the first ever time to shoot all the B-roll on the S1 II. As I touched on before, we are moving twice as fast. The amount of footage we are gaining, the IBIS of how good it is inside the Lumix, is just incredible. You can keep it really small and tight. Normally, I like the feel of a big kind of weighted camera, so it's not got micro jitters, and the IBIS is so good inside the Lumix. You can kind of achieve that. I'm shooting open gate in 50 frames per second, which is incredible. I'm exposing with false color. I'm giving off Wi-Fi to an iPad for the director. Things are just moving incredibly fast, allowing us to capture so much more footage, which is just going to make the editor's life really good. They're going to tell a better story, and we're going to have a happier client. And just to reference that, normally I would be shooting on like a bigger cinema camera with some big heavy Cineglass V-mount. My last one I did was shot on the Ursa Cine. The one before that, Sony Brano. These are the type of cameras I would normally capture the B-roll on. And just how low-key it's becoming and how good the quality. I'm shooting internal RAW. I'm using photography glass with mist filters on the ends to soften it up a bit, but that allows me to keep the fantastic AF. So we're not focus pulling, we're not kind of redoing takes. Everything is just so smooth, small, lightweight and fast. And honestly, the quality the director's seeing on the external monitor, he is totally happy with. He's not once complained. He actually loves and complimented on the shape of the open gate.
Do you have any upcoming projects that you're particularly excited about? Could you give us a glimpse into any dream projects you hope to realize?
Current projects I'm working on, as I mentioned, I've got a couple of like corporate and commercial mini docs for brands, which are going great and they're keeping me busy. I've recently just finished up a kind of big, nice size documentary for actor and music artist Ashley Thomas. He's doing his things over on kind of streaming platforms like Amazon and Netflix, and then he's transitioned back into the world of music, and I told his story doing that. Ended up a super beautiful piece, and we've just showcased that in London, and the reception has been unbelievable, really like wholesome. So that was really great. It's really early days, possibly starting a documentary for Kneecap, the Irish music band currently causing loads of controversy and waves across America and Europe. So there's definitely a story to be told there, and that should also be incredible. But the dream for me is not really like one singular project. It's more of a balance. You know, I really chase doing a lot of my own personal passion projects, somehow getting funding or just really taking the hit and paying for it myself. I do that a lot. I like finding a story and just doing it, you know. I'm kind of motivated by gear. I know it's really, I touched on it before, and I know it's really frowned upon. There's so many people like, gear don't matter, just go out and tell stories. And while there's an element of that true, but Don't ever feel bad for being motivated by a new lens or a new camera. You know, these things are going to get you excited, and if they get you out shooting, you know, it's just two routes to the same thing. So I'm someone who definitely gets excited about trying out new equipment. So I love to get new gear, new lenses, and go and test those out. So I guess if I had to give you like a dream project, it would just be like a really unique story that I had total freedom on, choosing camera, lenses, lighting, people I wanted to work with, which editors and which people I brought on to the actual shoot. If I had total freedom in that, with a little bit of budget, so I didn't have to spend my own money, that would be the absolute dream scenario for me.
Finally, is there anything special you would like to share with our viewers? Any advice for aspiring filmmakers or personal insights you would like to offer?
My final piece of advice, and I try and preach this more and more lately, is just please try and enjoy it. It's a very up and down career. There is very little security in this world we call filmmaking. Very few people get financially rich, but there is many other ways to feel rich and be happy. If you wanted all those other things like financial security or whatever, then you could just try and go and work somewhere else for someone. You've chose this career path because you enjoy creating videos. So the number one thing you should be chasing is enjoyment. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, it's going to be a really long road for most people in this career path. So if you are working for clients making you unhappy, try and replace them. If you are obsessing over gear that you can't afford and that's making you unhappy, just stop. The one you have is totally fine. Just really enjoy the process, and that way you will be unstoppable.
Gary, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. Stories like yours are truly inspiring for creatives and filmmakers all over the world. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more insightful interviews. I would like to thank Hukes Video Podcast Studio, the sponsor of this video. See you in the next episode of SORDUM. Kendine iyi bak, değer üret ve hoşça kal.